Hello class 12th. By the time you are completing your work of writing debates, let's begin with the reading of the lesson, second lesson of your book Flamingo. Second lesson is Lost Spring. It has been written by Anees Jung. Anees Jung was born in Rourkela and spent her childhood and adolescence in Hyderabad. She received her education in Hyderabad and in the United States of America. Her parents were both writers. Anees Jung began her career as a writer in India. She has been an editor and columnist for major newspapers in India and abroad, and has authored several books. So you might be understanding that Anees Jung was an Indian author. She was born and brought up in Hyderabad, and her education she received from Hyderabad as well as from USA. Her parents were also writers, and she had started her career as a writer in India, and she had been an editor as well as columnist in major newspapers in India as well as in foreign, and she has written many books. The following is an excerpt from the book titled Lost Spring: Stories of Stolen Childhood. Here she analyzes the grinding poverty and traditions which condemn these children to a life of exploitation. So here in this story, this lesson has been taken from her book named Lost Spring: Stories of Stolen Childhood. And in this chapter, she is analyzing the grinding, crushing poverty and traditions which are pushing these children into the life of exploitation. Dear students, let's discuss first about the title Lost Spring. What is the meaning of Lost Spring? You know, spring is the season associated with optimism and hope. It also works as a metaphor for childhood stage of our life. Childhood is also supposed to be the best period, as spring season is supposed to be the best season of the year. So, spring works as a metaphor for the childhood stage of our life. Every child hopes for new beginning and a bright future. The phase of childhood is all about innocence, energy, and tremendous inclination towards outdoor activities along with fun and play. It is also a time of getting more skill and knowledge and going to school. But here we take a look at a particularly impressive rendition, and that is here the spring has been lost. Simply means spring stands for childhood and lost. You know, here we will talk about children who have lost their childhood, who have to work in the Bengal industry, in the tea stalls. Okay, you might have seen many such children around you too who have to work. And what are the reasons? There are many reasons responsible for it. Lost Spring by Anees Jung talks about the national shame of children being forced to live a life of poverty and exploitation. The main two protagonists of the story of this chapter are Sahave Alam and Mukesh. They do not live their childhood as they have to carry the burden of poverty and illiteracy. Means because they belong to very poor families, that is why they have to work, they have to go to work, and they are also illiterate. They could not enjoy their childhood. In their miserable series of exploitation, the author provides glimpses of fortitude and resilience. Fortitude, dear students, mental or emotional strength that enables courage in case of adversity, and it also means physical strength. And Fortitude, spelling Fortitude, and resilience means mental ability to recover quickly from depression. Means, of course, these children, they are in miserable condition, they are not going to school, they are poverty stricken, they have to work, but still they are full of hope. Okay, they are full of hope. There are glimpses of fortitude and resilience in this chapter. The story deals with the deplorable condition of poor children who get forced to miss simple joyful moments of childhood because of their socio-economic conditions. They are not given the opportunity of schooling and are compelled to start work early in life. The author strives hard to eliminate child labor in this chapter. The author is striving hard to eliminate child labor through her book. She wants to convey a message to put an end to child exploitation and let all children enjoy their days of spring and joy. She propagates the education of children and enforcement of strict laws against child labor by government. So it was introductory words for this chapter. Now let's begin with the story. This story has been divided into two parts. First is named Sometimes I Find a Rupee in the Garbage, and this is the story about Sahave Alam. Okay, first protagonist, and in the second part you will find Mukesh, second protagonist. So Sahab and narrator both are talking in the beginning. Narrator Anish Jung asks him, "Why do you do this?" "I ask Sahib, whom I encounter every morning scrounging for gold in the garbage dumps of my neighborhood." So narrator tells that I oftenly ask him, "Why do you do this?" And whenever I come across this child every morning, and he is found scrounging for gold in the garbage dumps, heaps of garbage, and he keeps on scrounging, means searching for something. Here gold does not literally means gold. Gold means some coin, some rupee, something to eat. Okay, so he is found scrounging for gold in the garbage dumps of my neighborhood. Sahib left his home. One minute, let me set the text. Yes, Sahib left his home long ago. So means he has left his home many years ago. From where has he come from? Let's see. Set amidst the green fields of Dhaka, his home is not even a distant memory. There were many storms that swept away their fields and homes. His mother tells him that is why they left looking for gold in the big city where he now lives. Now he lives in Simapuri, at the periphery of Delhi. Means they are living in the outer part of Delhi named Simapuri, and they have come from Dhaka, Bangladesh. Why they have to leave their green fields? Because there were so many storms there, and these storms had swept away their fields and homes, and that was told to him by his mother. That is why they came out of Dhaka looking for gold, looking for employment in the big cities where now he lives, and now they are living in Simapuri. "I have nothing else to do," he mutters, looking away. So the question by narrator was, "Why do you do this?" He said, "I have nothing else to do. He mutters these words and starts looking away. "Go to school," I said glibly. Means out of fun I said, "You should go to school," realizing immediately how hollow the advice must sound. I immediately realized that I have advised him to go to school, but this advice is very hollow. Means he cannot go to school, but still I am advising him to go to school. He belongs to a poor family. How could he manage to go to school? Immediately I realized that this advice is very much hollow. But still the child answers the question asked by the narrator. He says, "There is no school in my neighborhood. When they build one, I will go." Means there is no school in my neighborhood. Whenever a school will be built, I will definitely go. Narrator says, if I start a school, will you come? I ask half joking. Narrator says, half jokingly, I asked, would you like to come to my school if I start a school? Yes, he says, smiling broadly. A few days later, I see him running up to me. Is there your school ready? And in this way, the narrator had sort of made a promise with the boy that I will start a school and will you join that school? And trusting her words, after a few days, he comes to her running and he asks her, is your school ready? Then the narrator had to say, it takes longer to build a school. I say embarrassed, but she felt very much embarrassed at having made a promise that was not meant. That she had made a promise with the boy, but she could not make that promise. That is why she was embarrassed and said, it takes longer to build a school. But promises like mine abound in every corner of his bleak world. Now she says that his world is gloomy, full of darkness, and many such promises will be there in each and every corner of his life. Means people, they might be making many such promises, but those promises would never have been made. After months of knowing him, I asked him his name. Then he oftenly used to come before her, doing this or that, running here and there. So they had started knowing each other, recognizing each other. So after months of knowing him, I asked him, the narrator says, I asked him his name. Sahabe Alam, he announces. And he told her his name as Sahabe Alam. He does not know what it means. If he knew its meaning, Lord of the universe, that is the meaning, he would have a hard time believing it. So this is the irony in the name of Sahab. Sahabe Alam means Lord of universe, God of the universe. And he perhaps didn't know the meaning of his name. If he would have known, then he would have taken a time. He would definitely have got shocked to know the meaning of his name. So this question often is asked in the question paper, what is the irony behind the name of Sahab? His name is Lord of Universe. His name is Sahabe Alam, means Lord of Universe, but he doesn't know the meaning of his name. And here Lord of Universe is scrounging for gold in the heaps of the garbage. That is the irony. Unaware of what his name represents, he roams the streets with his friends, an army of barefoot boys who appear like morning birds and disappear at noon. Over the months, I have come to recognize each of them. So she tells us that unaware of the meaning of his name, he roams, he wanders here and there in the streets with other boys who are his friends, and that is his friends along with him is an army of barefoot boys. All are barefoot, they never wear shoes, and they appear in the morning, like morning birds, and they disappear in the afternoon. Means they start their work in the morning and end up at the afternoon. Over the months, I have come to recognize, and then she says that I had started to recognize each of them with the passage of time. Once she again asked one of those boys, why aren't you wearing chappals? I asked one. My mother did not bring them down from the shelf, he answered simply. He answered that my mother does not bring the chappals from the shelf. Means I am having chappals, but my mother doesn't give them to me to wear. Even if she did, he will throw them off, adds another, who is wearing shoes that do not match. When the boy answered that my mother doesn't bring them down, the other boy immediately started saying something. He said, even if his mother will give him to wear the chappals, give him the chappals to wear, then he will definitely throw them off. He says these words because he was wearing shoes, and though these shoes were not matching, I want shoes, says a third boy, and third boy says, I want shoes. I want shoes, says a third boy, who has never owned a pair all his life. He has never worn shoes. Traveling across the country, here narrators commonly saying, general words. These are traveling across the country. I have seen children walking barefoot in cities or village roads. Often I have seen children, they are not in the habit of wearing shoes or chappals, even if they are living in cities or in village roads. It is not lack of money, but a tradition to stay barefoot. Yeah, it is not lack of money sometime, but it's also a tradition to stay barefoot. Is one explanation. It is one explanation. I wonder. Look, here is the army of those barefoot boys who appear in the morning like morning birds and disappear in the afternoon, having sack on the shoulder, scrounging the garbage dumps. If this is the only excuse to explain away a perpetual state of poverty, the author says that if this is the only excuse to explain away, perpetual means continue, means these people, they are very poor and they are living in perpetual state of poverty, and they are having this explanation that mother does not give the chappals from the shelf to bear, but the reality is they are poverty stricken. Here a story has been quoted, dear students, by the author, but it has no reference, means it has nothing to do with the main story. Okay, it's merely a reference. Oftenly questions are also not asked, but still let's read it out. I remember a story a man from UDP once told me. As a young boy, he would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest. So she is telling us a story of a man from UDP. He had told the story a man from UDP had told and narrated a story to the author. As a young boy, he used to go to school and passed an old temple. Passing by an old temple where his father was a priest, he would stop briefly at the temple, and while going to the school, he used to stop there at the temple for a brief short time and pray for a pair of shoes. 30 years later, I visited his town and temple, which was now drowned. Now, author says, I visited the same place after 30 years, his town and his temple, which was now drowned in an air of desolation. Everything was desolation, means destroyed. The conditions were changed now. But in the backyard where he lived the new priest, in the backyard of the temple lived a new priest. There were red and white plastic chairs. A young boy dressed in a grey uniform, wearing socks and shoes, arrived panting and threw his school bag on a folding bed. Probably it might be the child of that priest who used to pray for chappals 30 years ago. A young boy who was coming from school, he was dressed in grey uniform, wearing socks and shoes. He arrived panting, he was finding it difficult to breathe in the air, okay, panting, and threw his school bag on the folding bed. Looking at the boy, I remembered the prayer another boy had made to the goddess when he had finally got a pair of shoes. Means she says that I still remember that there was a man who used to make prayers for a pair of shoes 30 years ago, but now this boy has found a pair of shoes, okay, and he has finally got a pair of shoes. Let me never lose them. The goddess had granted his prayer. That boy 30 years ago had made a prayer that I should have the pair of shoes and I should never lose it, and that prayer was granted by the goddess in the temple. So here now author correlate with the present scenario, saying young boys like the son of priest now wore shoes, but many others, like the rag pickers in my neighborhood, remain shoeless. Okay, Sahabe Alam and his friends, all the boys are rag pickers, and they never wear shoes, they remain shoeless. Okay. My acquaintance with the barefoot rag pickers leads me to Simapuri. Once I got an opportunity because I was acquainted with, means I was known to, I was acquainted with these boys. So I visited Simapuri where they lived. Simapuri, it's a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it metaphorically. Oftenly, students' question is asked on this line. Simapuri, a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it metaphorically. Metaphorically means when we compare Simapuri and Delhi, then of course Simapuri is very much near Delhi. It is at the outer part of in the outer part of Delhi, but still it is miles away from Delhi. Reason, in Simapuri, people, rag pickers, they live, their living conditions are miserable, they find it difficult to make both ends meet. But on the contrary, Delhi is known for its lavish style, for its wonderful living ways. That is why it has been told that the people who are living in the periphery of Delhi, means in Simapuri, they are miles away from it. Those who live here are squatters who came from Bangladesh back in 97. Sahib's family is among them. Simapuri was then a wilderness. So these people, they have come from Bangladesh in 1971, and Sahib's family is one among them. And Simapuri then was in wilderness. Mean it was not a developed area. It still is, and still it is not developed, but it is no longer empty. Means the people from Dhaka, they have pitched their tents there. Okay. And there are so many people living there in structures of mud with roofs of tin and tarpaulin, devoid of sewage, drainage or running water, live 10,000 rag pickers. So here these people, they live in structures of mud, means their homes are made of mud, and over them, above them, the roofs are of tin and tarpaulin. Tarpaulin, you know, in Hindi it is tarpal. Tin and tarpaulin, devoid of sewage, mean there is no sewage system, there is no drainage system, okay, or running water. And there lived 10,000 rag pickers. They have lived here for more than 30 years without an identity. They are living there without any identity, without permits. No permits are with them to stay there, but with ration cards. But they are having ration cards that they get their names on voter lists and enable them to buy grain. And due to these ration cards, they are able to get or buy grain from the government. Otherwise, due to political reason, they are staying. Otherwise, they are not having any permits. They are having only ration cards. Food is more important for survival than an identity. Okay, these are the words of some of the lady there. Food is more important for survival than an identity. If you have to survive, then food is required, not any identity. If at the end of the day we can feed our families and go to the bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields. That gave us no grain. So, say a group of women in tattered saris. So, these words were spoken by women, a group of women who were wearing tattered, mean torn saris. They said, if at the end of the day we are able to feed our families and we are going to bed without aching stomachs, mean we have taken food, then it is better to stay here in Simapuri rather than to go to those fields which gave us nothing. Means Dhaka. Women in tattered saris said these words when I asked them why they left their beautiful land of green fields and rivers. Okay, when narrator asked them about the Dhaka, why did they leave Dhaka, then they had answered this. Wherever they find food, they pitch their tents that become transit homes. So they told that wherever they find food, they start living there. They pitch their tents there, and these tents become their temporary homes, transit homes. Children grow up in them becoming partners in survival. Okay, children also born and are brought up there, and they also help to add to the income of the family. And survival in Simapuri means rag picking. And if we are staying in Simapuri, then there is no other work than rag picking. Through the years, it has acquired the proportions. let me set the text first. Yes. 1 minute. Yes. And survival in Simapuri means rag picking. Through the years, it has acquired the proportions of a fine art. So here in Simapuri, rag picking is only means of survival, and through the years, it has become a fine art for them. They are very much skillful in this. Garbage to them is gold. It is their daily bread, a roof over their heads, even if it is a leaking roof. But for child, it is even more. So here, dear students, a difference has been told. Means what is the meaning of garbage for young children as well as for elders has been given here. For the elders, garbage for them is gold, and it is their daily bread because they get food from that garbage only. It is like a roof over their heads. Mean if they are living in the home, they are only due to the garbage. Even if it is a leaking roof, no problem if the roof is leaking. But for child, it is even more. But for the child, its meaning is different. Let's see what the children they think about garbage. I sometimes find a rupee, even a 10 rupee note. Sahib says, his eyes lighting up. Sahib gets very happy. He says that I find a rupee, and sometimes I also get 10 rupee note for this garbage, and his eyes start shining. When you can find a silver coin in a heap of garbage, you don't stop scrounging, for there is hope of finding more. And if you think that if you are going to get more and more money from the garbage, then why would you stop scrounging it? You would keep on scrounging more and more to find more and more. It seems that for children, garbage has a meaning different from what it means to their parents. So for children, garbage has different meaning from what it has meaning for their parents. For the children, it is wrapped in wonder. Mean for children, garbage is something wrapped in wonder, and for elders, it is the means of survival. So here is the difference. You should underline it. One winter morning, I see Sahab standing by fence gate of the neighborhood club, watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. I like the game, he hums, content to watch it standing behind the fence. I go inside when no one is around, he admits. The gatekeeper let me use the swing. So, Neta says, one winter morning I saw Sahib was standing by the fence gate of the neighborhood club, and he was watching two people who had been dressed in white, and they were playing their tennis. And he says, I like this game very much. He hums, mean he says he speaks those words like means like singing. Humming means singing. He speaks this word, I like this game, and he was content, mean satisfied to watch it standing from outside, okay, behind the fence. And he says that sometime I get time, sometime I also enter this fence gate because the gatekeeper lets me use the swings. There are swings also inside, and gatekeeper never stops me going inside. Sahib too is wearing tennis shoes that look strange over his discolored shirt and shorts. That morning Sahib was also wearing tennis shoes, and they were looking very strange, very awkward over his discolored, mean faded shirt and shorts. Someone gave them to me. He told that I have got those tennis shoes from someone. He says in the manner of an explanation. He gave the explanation that I have got those from someone. The fact that they are discarded shoes of some rich boy who perhaps refused to wear them because of a hole in one of them does not bother him. Those shoes were having holes. And due to that hole, some rich boy had discarded them, left wearing those shoes. But those holes, or this fact of having holes in the shoes, never bothers Sahib. For one who has walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true. but the game he is watching so intently is out of his reach. Okay, so the game is, he cannot afford that game, he can only be satisfied by watching it, but he has remained barefoot all through his life. Getting shoes with holes is like a dream come true. Another day's incident, narrator is telling us, says, this morning Sahib is on his way to the milk booth. In his hand is a steel canister. Once she found that he was going to his milk booth, means Sahib now has stopped scrounging the garbage dump and he has started working in the tea stall, milk booth. And in his hand he was carrying a steel canister. Okay, it's a kind of container, steel container. I now work in a tea stall down the road, he says, pointing in the distance. Telling him towards the direction where he's working. He tells that I now have started working in a tea stall. I am paid 800 rupees and all my meals, I am given meals, food as well as 800 rupees a month. Does he like the job? I asked him, do you like the job? His face, I see, has lost the carefree look, but his face had lost that tension-free look, means he was looking tensed. The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag he would carry so lightly. He always carried a plastic bag over his shoulders and that was never heavy for him. That was always light for him. But this steel canister seems to be heavier than that plastic bag over his shoulder. The bag was his. That plastic bag used to be his, and the canister belongs to the man who owns the tea shop. Means this canister belongs to the owner of the shop. Simply means that now he is not the owner of his own will. He is not working according to his own wish. He has to take the orders. He is working under the instructions of someone. That is why he has lost his tension-free look. He seems to be tensed. But Sahib is no longer his own master. Yes, Sahib has not been his own master now. Sometimes this line also is there in the questions. You are asked what is the meaning of this line. Sahib is no longer his own master because he is working under the instructions of someone and he is not living his life according to his own rules. Okay, so this was the first part about Sahib-e-Alam and the Seemapuri and the rag pickers and their parents and how they are living. And by this right side, you can see there are certain questions. You have to answer these questions. What is Sahib looking for in the garbage dumps? Where is he and where has he come from? Second, what explanation does the author offer for the children not wearing footwear? Third question, is Sahib happy working at the tea stall? Explain. By the time you keep on reading, means by the time you are completing the work of writing debates, you read this first part as well as answer the questions, given 3 questions, and I will be coming with the second part soon. Okay, if you find any problem, please make a call and stay happy, stay healthy, stay indoors. You may make call for any queries. Good wishes, good luck. Thank you. Have a good day.